I'm going to plank. The reason you bring your feet apart for push-ups, planks, any of that stuff is because when we're here, we can't get as much tuck and stack that diaphragm. So what I want to do is I want to bring my feet out so I have a little bit more motion to scoop my abs, all right? But then I need to set my rib cage in place by pulling myself forward into a straight line, okay? That's a good spot to start, okay? But once we're here, what you're doing is if you're pushing to the ground, you're just using your back to hold yourself here. I'm not really using my abs. Yeah, they're there, but it's not like that's not the main muscle I'm using. So that's why we promote almost like not a crunch, but like a drive. So what I'm going to think about without actually moving is once I get set here, I'm going to pull my elbows back and I'm going to drive my toes into the floor. All right, and that's going to instantly light up your abs. So if you look at the ground, all right, I always cue people like something like this. I'll be like, hey, pretend you're on a massive piece of paper, and once you get into position, I want you to riffle the paper up like this. Okay, so it's this action of bringing your feet and your toes together without actually bringing them to touch. So what it would look like is I'll get set up here, okay, tuck, shift forward a little bit, and then I'm going to drive elbows, push toes in the floor, and as soon as I do that, literally every single fiber on my front side just gets lit. All right, and I've had you do that before, right? You know that. I think you guys have done this before as an exercise. Go ahead, get down and just try it right now.
It's a lot like the body saw when your feet are coming up. That's what the arcade is.
Yeah, but you don't want your hips to move, right?
Right.
So go ahead, everybody get down and try this right now. So yep, legs are always going to be straight, feet are going to be just outside hip distance apart. You're going to shift your shoulders over your wrists or towards your wrists, and then you're going to push your toes, pull your elbows. There you go. If you do it right, upper back should look like a turtle. And then if you're not really getting what you want in the upper back, think push into the floor with your forearms. Boom. Perfect. Come on down. Okay, so what you're preventing yourself from doing though is, right, this is an anti-extension. You're preventing yourself from going like this, right, extending your low back. Okay, so if it looks like this, we're defeating the whole purpose. So that's why we want to push here. That's going to get them up a little bit, and we want to tuck. All right, and so if I say, hey, make your upper back like a turtle, most of the time, just reaching up here will get this to kind of come up naturally. And then big thing is you can either say squeeze your butt, or if you think they can kind of understand what you're talking about by tucking their hips, you can go ahead and try and cue that too.
Do you want to be long in the back of your neck too?
Yeah, so it's good. I just want it to be straight, right? So I don't want us looking at our tippy toes. I want us to think just like neutral here. So it's going to be probably at your hands or maybe a little bit past, just like a push-up.
A pretty good cue is like to make a double chin. So kind of like, not like look
yes.
down, like a chin to like chest or anything like that, but kind of just like bring your head back, make a double chin. It'll keep you kind of neutral.
Yeah, that 100% could work. And like give it a try, and if it doesn't work, be like, hey, like if you went too far down, just lift your chin up a little bit more. If you didn't go down far enough, drop your chin lower. Very good. So then to progress that, all right, this is one other kind of like, we'll skip that one. We'll come back to it in a minute. So then how do you make that harder, right? If that's baseline level 1, right, let's just say, hey, you get a new kid in, 10 seconds, right? Hold that for 10 seconds. That sucks, right? They're not going to think it sucks until they actually learn how to do it the right way. And you'll know, like the kids who've been here longer, they know like that's just not, like a 20-second plank is a 20-second plank. Like if you're not shaking and dying, like you're probably doing it wrong. But the way you just make that harder would just be put your feet up on something higher. So like pads, mats, blocks or something like that. Because that's going to shift you more. It's going to take your leg stability out of it a little bit. And when you decline yourself like that, you're just going to feel more on the front side. Same position, same time, right? But if you can get somebody to do a 30-second RKC plank, like then you can put their feet up. But really, like we don't get into that one. So then the next one we would go to on the ground would be a body saw, okay? And with a body saw, you're literally just taking sliders out there. I'll just use plates because they're right here. All right, and it's not, I've seen you coach this, Trev, and I'm glad we're going over this because you've been coaching this for a really long time. I'm not going to like hammer you out in front of people just because I don't want people to think you don't know what you're talking about because 99% of the time you do. All right, but you'll get set up here. All right, and it's the same exact position, but now the only way you're making this harder is you just got to move, okay? So anytime you want to create an exercise that's going to be harder, you're always going to do it standing still first. That's called static. And then to make it harder, you make it dynamic, okay? Think of a pull-off, for example. Like if I'm doing a pull-off, we're always going to start with a hold. Once that gets easy or hard, too easy, you incorporate like movement, and that makes it harder because you're not just holding there, you're using your arms. It's trying to pull you in different spots rather than just out here. So for this, it's the same thing, right? I'm going to get set up here. I'm going to tuck my hips. I'm going to push the floor away. And then I'm going to stretch far back as I can. And then just come forward back to center. All right, I don't want to come up here because then we're just flexing the low back. And right, we don't want to extend. We don't want to flex. We want to stay neutral. All right, and then the other two, these will be like a little more advanced. Will be like a hanging leg raise, right? Because I'm going to come forward and I'm not going to extend back with my legs. And obviously knees will be easier, and then straight legs will be better. If you're getting a lot of swinging, that's too hard. Or you can do a stability ball knee tuck, where you're going to be, pretend this is my stability ball here. All right, you can do this on forearms, or on hands here, and it's just pulling here. This is hard because it's kind of tall, but you don't want to kind of come up. It's literally knees to chest, push it away. Yeah, that one's righteous.
What about stir the pot? Are we counting that one?
Stir the pot would be an anti-extension as well. Yep, you can throw that one on there. The only thing is, right, like we have a group of 20, we only have 3 blue balls. Yeah. Adults though, maybe. But you got to think, always start it earlier. So like I'm cool like with the stir the pot if they're doing that, probably like on their hands and knees would be better. But those are basically our go-to anti-extension exercises. I like those on T days. Because it's going to kind of like undo what you do with the deadlift. For like a...
How do you mean that?
So when you're in like this kind of like more extension-based pattern where you're going to come up and you're going to like extend, it's going to kind of like they're used to doing that, so it's primed. So when they go into that, it's going to become almost like solidify. So not re-undo. That's
Yeah, I thought you meant
emphasize. Sorry,
okay.
yeah.
That's
Then opposite would be like an anti-flexion, which is the next one. So like the next anti-flexion one would just be a dead bug. All right. And so like right, because anti-flexion, right, I'm not going to crunch forward. The way you do that is just by keeping your low back flat on the ground, right? So if I'm coming up off like that, that's a little too much flexion. All right, but we'll come here. And just starting with this is fine, or like you can go hands up. Like this would be like level 1, someone needs it, like serious help, like an adult. Level 2, level 3. Okay, and so my shoulders come up, but my low back is still pushing the floor. My legs aren't dead, right? I want 90 degrees, so ankle in line with knee, knee in line with hip, toe pull back towards my shin. Bang. All right, and then once they get that down, same thing as before, right? Static first, dynamic second. Then we'll go into a leg lower and then come back, right? When I see a leg lower, I don't want to come up and then just drop my leg down because your hips are part of your core too. And when you do this, you're not using your hip nearly as much. So what we'll do here is we'll kick up. I want to think down and out at the same time. So I'm not going to kick out and then lower down. I'm going to go, whoop, same time, float your heels so they don't have to cheat and relax on the floor. Come back. All right, and you guys have pretty much know what that looks like. I think like across the board, that one's always been good. But like, if it doesn't look good with the feet, there's no sense of throwing in hands. Because what happens with hands is it doesn't really come into an issue of strength. It comes into an issue of like mobility and like flexibility of like the arm. Because a lot of times you'll just see like arms fold over. So I want to cue a good reach, and then I would say almost touch your thumb to the floor behind you, and then come back here. All right, and if they're saying that, like, give them a few sets. Like a lot of times, what you'll see is stuff's moving that's not supposed to move, right? So like that opposite arm will drop down the other way because you're trying to balance. That means their abs probably aren't strong enough to do that quite yet. So you just reverting back to legs only.
How do you feel about banded dead bugs?
Banded dead bugs is great. That's just going to be, it's a little bit more, I would kind of pair that. That'd be even easier than like an arms. Just because it's a good point of reference to get somebody set up on. Like, I mean, throw it in as needed. It's not like if like dead bugs with legs is a level 4. It's not like that one's like a level 6 or a 5. It's like it's the same. You just encouraging people to stay a little stiffer in their lats. Like what that'll do is like if I get something set up tied to the band behind me, I'm going to whoosh pull it over. So my hands will always be neutral facing each other, and my elbow should be right on top of my shoulder. From there, I want to crunch up, and I'll get a lot more kind of back here, and this is going to kind of anchor me down as I move my legs. All right. So those are all the levels of dead bug. Like you can milk those pretty much every week. I mean, no one's ever gets those really down really good. And like those are pretty much all the progressions. then like you'll see even like for in season they're doing like back extensions. That's going to be, that one's tricky because if you do it right, it's an anti-extension. If you do it wrong, it's going to be like a flexion-based exercise. Because when I think of like the way you would do this, is it like
Flexion or extension? Because I mean, because they're coming out and they're like
you're
overextend.
coming to neutral, so it should be an anti-extension. So like what I'm saying here is like, let me get up off the table real quick. What's up? Because I like better in here. I am toasty though. So like when I get somebody set up in a position like this, alright, pretend my whole hips are off, I can't do it, I'm not strong enough.
Alright, it's gonna be, I'm going to round my upper back, and I'm going to push my hips
Into the pad up there until I come neutral. I'm not gonna curl up and look up because then we are whoosh, extending the lower back.
Right.
Like hold my feet real quick, Trev, just push down my ankles. Right, so if I round, if I push my hips forward, squeeze my butt to neutral, I'm getting my low back to kick on. Go ahead, relax. Thank you. But I'm not overdoing it, and the reason we round is so that when I round my upper back, my lower back stays flat. So if it doesn't look like that out there, that would just be a cue, hey, round your upper back more. Like I'll say, like hold your hands like a genie and reach your elbows to the floor.
And that does what? Because that's a recurring thing, is the turtle back. That does what? That flattens?
Yeah, so whatever happens on my upper back, the opposite is going to happen on my lower back. So if I'm sideways here, so just so you can see me here, if I reach forward, my tailbone almost comes underneath me, right? So it's going to, everything's going to kind of go that way. So if my spine's this way, or sorry, if everything's going to go this way. So if I reach this way, my chest goes back, my upper back gets bigger, my lower back almost gets like smaller. So if you watch it from this side here, watch my upper back first.
Yeah.
Good. Now watch my lower back. It's like when I reach, it's way to the tuck.
Understood.
And the same principle for the opposite.
Correct.
The more forward you put your chest, the more your back's gonna curve, your butt's gonna.
We can go out here with these last few because we do new band.
What do you think so far?
Dude, I grabbed Tom's ankles, jacked. It's more of his calf, but.
Okay, so anti-extension, planks and the like, anti-flexion is going to be like dead bug variations and the like, even like maybe even like a back extension, or like like hanging leg raise is extension. Dead bugs are anti-extension. We could even throw in what else are we doing? Yeah, we're gonna hit those right now. So now, so like those are like the front and the back. Now for the sides, okay? So think anti-rotation, right? Rotating. If you rotate one way, one side's gonna get loose, one side's gonna get tight. Same if you go the other side, okay? That's how we create rotation through our body. It's just through these abs. They run almost kind of like diagonally down towards our hips. Okay, so with that in mind, that kind of helps you to know when it flexes, it just doesn't crunch down. It kind of pulls forward and down when it gets turned on. So level one would be a side plank. All right, and we don't do any, like every time we do a plank, we'll do an RKC plank. It's called RKC. It stands for Russian Kettlebell Complex. If you in Russia made this whole like plank system up, it's just a better way, like I said, to get more bang for your buck rather than just hanging out on your upper back to do this. So it's the same setup on my side, right? Elbow should always be under my shoulder, wrist in a straight line here. If they go here, that's okay. If they go here, whatever. I don't want it to be out, I don't want it to be in, and I don't want it to be like way out here. So they're down here. So I'll get set up in a good position here. All right, hips on top of each other. Don't let them kind of lay back here. Okay, so everything's gonna be stacked. Feet are gonna be on the sides. All right, and then even honestly, like a level one would be here. Okay, and then I pull my elbow and my knee together without dropping my chest. That's gonna be the biggest thing you're gonna see is people are gonna be like looking down here, shaking. Okay, I want their chest to be wide open, shoulder on top of shoulder. Here. Okay, level two, front foot support. Level three. Okay? And then obviously you always do the other side as well. I would more likely get like problem with that, especially for athletes, it's a little bit better because you're using your whole body. Some adults, like I said, like that knee position might work, but also might be super hard for them. So I would probably look to do like a pull-off variation instead because it's the same thing, just with not as much kind of effort or like not incorporating into our body as much. So anytime you do a pull-off, always work from the ground up, just like everything else we've done in like half kneeling presses, up to like standing, seated, all that other stuff. the same kind of rules apply. So when I do this is going to be set up probably about like hip height, and maybe like probably like more like belly button, chest height. Hand always goes through the band. I make a fist over top. All right, and then it's so much easier to progress this because if it's too easy, just tell them to slide out. If it's too hard, tell them to slide in. But I'm always going to go opposite leg out because it's going to be the easiest variation. They can do the other leg, but it's just going to be a little bit different because you have like no base support. Like when this band wants to pull me back here, I can kind of use this leg to balance it. If I go here, it's going to really it's going to be hard for me to keep position. So I just nix that one all together because there's really no point, in my opinion. So, same thing, we're always going to be stacked, right? Knee on top of my ankle, toes are going to be straight ahead, foot is totally on the ground. Grab it here. Alright, I'm even going to cue like a hip tuck or a butt squeeze. So I'm going to tuck my hips in this position, and I'm going to reach, arm straight, locked, forward here, okay? Now I'm not going to be shrugging anything, okay? Shoulders should be down and away from my ears. Alright, elbows should be, like I said, locked, and I'm just holding this like a statue while trying not to kind of let my butt stick out and lose that tuck, okay? From there, we can go into movement. You can go into pauses with movement, so I can be like, hey, hold for 10 seconds and press for 10 reps. Or we can even do like an ABC, where I'll tell them, if we do ever do an ABC, which is probably coming up next block here, pretend you got a 6-inch box in front of you, and you can't go outside the lines of that box. So I'm going to do small little letters, and I'm literally just going to draw the alphabet.
Spell my name. My full name.
And that would be all like the level 1 pull-offs. Honestly, like, you don't have to progress someone to like hold, press, ABCs on a half kneeling. If it's okay if you go like from like say like a hold to a press, and then you can go to this next one, which is just tall kneeling. Okay. In place. Okay. So what we're doing here is you're just taking away your base of support. So it's going to be, you're going to have to rely more on your abs to balance rather than using your legs so you don't fall over. Okay. Same rules apply. Hand through the band, fists over top. I like to start it kind of right in that bone in their chest. Tuck my hips. All right. Reach long through your armpits. All right. Keep that butt squeeze, and I'm just going to hold, or we can press, or we can draw, whatever you're feeling. Okay. Good one to go there. Working our way up to standing. All right, boom, same thing. Feet should be just underneath us. I'm kind of used to go like a quarter squat. I think you guys have all seen it now. Like everyone's gonna stand straight up, right? Because when we get here, everyone gets all wonky. They're just not strong enough to hold that position. So let's just make it easier on ourselves. Legs will be straight, not like locked out, but straight. Toes are straight. Tuck your hips, chest high, reach long. All right, and then we can do the motions, the drawing, all stuff like that. All right, once they get that down, you could even do like an upright shuffle. Okay, so this would be like one of the harder ones, looking to see if they can control it, not dragging their feet, right? You're gonna pick your foot up, feet together, foot up, feet together. All right. And you should, and a good way to tell this is like if you just go close your eye, like if he was doing that, I would literally just take my hand, cut him in half. If he's like shifty and weird, that means he's obviously doing it wrong, and then you just try to correct him back to normal.
Where are you feeling that? Adductor?
So,
Ever?
But obviously I go here, I instantly feel obliques. When I step, I'm going to get more kind of outside butt cheek on this outside leg that I step with. And it just depends on whatever leg's on the ground here. Like when I pick up here, I'm going to get way more here. And like I said, it's just the same thing. Static first, dynamic second. As soon as you take any movement, incorporate more movement into it, it's always going to be harder. And then if you want to get really weird with this, with some of these more advanced kids, you could take it into a split squat. Okay, so I'll have them start on a knee, tuck their hips, reach long, boom, come up. All right, and then you do all your movements with that. That one's fun. It's hard. Those are anti-rotation, right? We do not want to move. So, and like that seems counterintuitive, right? Because in sport, you rotate all the time, right? You're hitting, you're swimming, like even like a throw, even in a sprint, right? You rotate. But think about it like this: you can't develop like movement without a strong base, right? So if you don't have the ability to not rotate, you won't have the ability to rotate because it's really not, it's never trained, right? So like I'm trying to think of like a good analogy for that.
Would that be you can't jump until you land?
Correct. That's exactly what it is, right? If you can't absorb the floor, you can't absorb it and then take off from the floor and do it well because you're not strong enough to even absorb it in the first place. Right, so you always want to think about like this, like in any quality, like strength, like if you think of like a pyramid of like performance, like strength's pretty much always going to be pretty close to the bottom of it. If it's not like aerobic endurance or like capacity being able to like make it through a workout, like I'd say probably the next thing over top of that would be strength, right? Because then cause the stronger you are, the more potential you have to get faster, and all the other things, and then power comes along with that, and all this other stuff, mobility, flexibility, stuff like that, would trail off of that. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure that was everything.
You want to get into carries?
Oh, carries, that's right. Carries are super simple. Carries are kind of, I'm going to say like a mixture of both. They are kind of a mixture of both because it depends on what you're doing. So
It's just everything at a different plane.
I think it's more functional in the sense that like a lot of the times you're not going to have to think about using your obliques and a half kneeling at home, but like for something like this, like a loaded carry, if you're able to load your posture here and move weight under control, you're using like everything and you don't have to coach it. So like for a double, the hardest thing is honestly just teaching kids how to pick this up the right way. Like I want them to deadlift it up with a completely flat back because as you get stronger, you're going to see kids start to like cat back it up. So I'm going to get set up in the middle of my stance here, stand up tall. Always start them with two first, right? Even if it's like a new kid, I really don't think they need to be doing single arm farmer's walks just yet, okay? But we're going to get set up here, okay? Chest is going to be up, shoulders back, chin up. All right, posture's great. And then from there, I'm going to kind of cue a little tuck if we can get it there, and then you're going to walk. Okay, and the goal is obviously the weights never want to touch your thighs. All right, so they don't have to hold them out like a lateral raise, but the bigger they get, the more you're kind of going to have to hold them off here. And all that does is that kind of, like you should be holding it with your back and then just walking it, right? So I'm thinking like my shoulders are together, that gets my like upper back really tight, and if I kind of let my arms go straight, my armpits get tight, my lats, and then you'll walk, okay? I used to kind of be like that whole like, hey, like don't tippy toe on it, which is like it's good. Like I don't want kids like walking on a tightrope because then you're not really using your abs to brace. But they don't need to be like walking out here either. This should be just kind of like a normal walk. Just try not to cross your feet. Okay, that's going to be almost like, this is kind of like your big hitter. Like you're going to get everything. You're going to need your front, you need your sides, you need your lower back. All right, as soon as you take one away, that's going to be an anti, like not rotation, but anti like lateral flexion. So lateral side bending. Okay, so we don't want to let this pull us down over the side, and we don't want to overcorrect and lean this way. So a lot of times what you'll see is kids are going to lean so they're not in weighted hand, so it doesn't feel like they're falling over to the floor. So like I'll even tell kids, hey, just lean more towards the weight, and they like come back to center, and they're straight, right? But if they're really leaning that much, it's too heavy. Like it shouldn't be, you shouldn't see a change in like a normal walking posture with the load, otherwise it's too heavy. All right, and then if you just cue, hey, arm off, all right, chest up, and then walk. I would say like walk like you're on train tracks, just so like they have like a cue to like know like, hey, don't cross my feet, and then you can do that again with any other variation. Realistically, like I really think those are probably the only ones we would use, other than like a chaos one you could throw in time and again. That one you would just take a band. Same concept as before, right? This is like more, we're moving, but as soon as I do this, it becomes a lot more dynamic and more movement because this is called like perturbation. How you doing? All right, it's more kind of like just like a lot of like miniature, oscillatory, like quick, tiny, rapid movements. So what you do is you just get more stabilization out of that. So like if I'm like going over here, it's gonna like hit you in different spots if it's heavy enough. I'm shaking this on purpose because that's probably how it would look. All right, and then you're just gonna get a little bit more bang for your buck there. You go single or double there. Really like waiter carries, all that other stuff, overhead carries, rack carries, like they all have a place. But in the scale that we work with, it's really not economical to try to have kids do that because one, it's super hard to teach, and two, if they can't do this perfectly, there's really no point in them doing the other ones either. If you get so like I know Ian was asking me the other day, like why would I have somebody do like a rack carry? It's great for like upper back stabilization, like it's someone like an overhead throwing athlete, or like kind of you could go like an upside down kettlebell for like shoulder like stability. They're all great, but like in what we do, I don't think, I'm not going to discourage you guys from trying it out. I think you guys probably should give those a try and see what those are like. But they're really easy to mess up, and they're really easy to like injure people with. Like I've jacked shoulders up doing that before, and so I just kind of leave it alone. Like Like if you're overhead pressing, if you're benching, if you're good at like body weight movements like push-ups and like all that other stuff, like your shoulder should be pretty dang healthy. We don't really specialize in stuff like that. We just do a lot of general stuff. And those are carries. Questions with any of that?
That's more stability muscles, correct?
Well, like I said, your abs are stability muscles, right? They don't move. They shouldn't move. It's kind of like if I were to cut you open, like your abs are like almost like a crosshatch. Think of like a blanket, like a quilted blanket. They're like mismatched. They're like tracked. They're not just like a bicep, just like a big slap. Like cut off your bicep, it'd just be like me holding like kind of like a. Like you've cut a deer open before, right? You see like how this muscles like striate. That's like I have like one going this way, one going this way, like going that way. Like it just there's a lot of layers and there's a lot of like internal like little muscles. So it's very complex to like kind of pinpoint what's what. But I would just say like anything we do ab-wise is always going to be a stabilizer. Because they get enough rotation in sport, right? Like, I mean, you can do like rotational med ball throws because, like, I think that has a lot of benefit for people who rotate because you have to be able to do it quickly. But like I said, if they don't have the strength to just even sit here and hold it, how are they gonna have the strength to take something that's weighted and then move it? There's no strength. It's kind of like a jelly, it's like I always call them like a sack of potatoes. You're just loose. You got no control, and you just like throw them, and it's kind of like poof.
Like
no
Jello.
tension. They're all loose.
Like Jello.
Like a band, like a wet noodle. There we go. That's it.
Like a wet Trevor.
Ooh.
No wet noodles allowed.
Ooh.
All right, let's go back in the office.